So without further ado, we're going to have Sandro Frattura, the database manager or senior DBA of Online Buddies, which is the world's largest online gay dating site.
That's right.
And I used to work there, so I know firsthand how crazy it is, and I can only imagine that the data has gotten bigger and crazier in the 5 years since I've been there. So without further ado, Sandro is going to talk about Pentaho. He doesn't work for Pentaho, so any evangelism he does is because he loves it because he uses it.
That's right. It's actually kind of the first thing I wanted to say, so thanks everybody for being here. I actually do not represent Pentaho at all. I've been a user for about 2 years. Happy to see some alumni from both Sherry and Heidi, former Online Buddies people. My original role prior to Online Buddies and at Online Buddies was as a DBA, and trying to keep the trains running and make the databases perform fast and all that kind of stuff. And then we started doing a search for a BI person, and we're just having trouble finding anybody who didn't work in the sort of Cognos, Hyperion, really, mega hundreds of thousands of dollars licensing type stuff. And we were trying to find people who worked with Pentaho or Jasper and just couldn't find them. And the ones that we did find were extremely expensive. So I essentially volunteered to say, I'll take a shot at it. So I don't pretend to be a data warehouse guru. If you want esoteric discussion about slowly changing dimensions and snowflake schemas and stuff, there are classes at Northeastern for that. For me, the way I've always worked in my professional life is to basically learn what I need to learn in order to be productive for my company. And so I say that because I don't know everything there is to know about Pentaho. I've been using it for a little under 2 years, and but what I know has become very useful for my company. And so much so that the executives, if there's something that doesn't run one day, or if the software is not up, they contact me immediately because they use the stuff every day. So that's one small little disclaimer. In terms of what I'm going to do, I don't have a big slide deck. I'm not going to be preaching about esoteric concepts. What I want to basically show everybody is kind of in 3 steps. One is a step-by-step about how to do a transformation. How many people have heard of what ETL? Do people know what ETL is? Okay, great. So it's I think in Microsoft SQL Server, is it SSIS now? I forget what they've gone to now. So Pentaho has a tool called PDI, Pentaho Data Integration. I'm going to go through how a simple transformation will work to get data from 3 different data sources and then combine them into one for the purposes of creating a fact table. And then I'm going to show you a real demonstration of the sales cube that we have at Online Buddies to give you a sense of what dimensions we report on and how, basically show you how easy it is to do that. And then finally, there's going to be some, I'll talk about the reporting tool as well. There is one question that I think people ask, and we are an enterprise customer of Pentaho, whereas there are, if you go online and you look for, it's page 5 on here as I recall, there is a whole long list of things that you get with both the community and the enterprise edition, and then a longer list of the things that you don't get. All the check marks on the right. I won't go into all of them in detail or whatever, but I will tell you from my experience that having access to support, especially in year 1, was really, really important. Pentaho isn't as fully baked a software as Cognos or Hyperion or one of those, so they do have weird little anomalies and bugs that come up that it really helps to be able to send an email, and their customer support has been the best I've ever dealt with. So there are also some actual features that you don't get. So what I'm going to be demonstrating today, I think is all available in the community edition. I'm not sure, but I just you can go and download it. They get thousands of downloads a day, and you can play with their sample data. So I'm obliged to show this because my partner. No sound. Damn. He does graphic design, and he took the Pentaho logo and made it all 3-dimensional with crazy sound and stuff. So I was obliged to show that. If anybody needs 3D design work, let me know, because I know good contact for that. Anyway, so on to the presentation. So, and my one other disclaimer is that I am doing this connected via RDP to my desktop at work. I came here today and found out that that works perfectly fine. I had a demonstration that was all on my laptop, but it's just a little bit more, fewer things can go wrong if I connect to the thing that I use pretty much every day. So we are going through RDP on Wi-Fi, and so it's going to be just a hair slower than usual, but it's good enough for government work.
Are you going to have some short summary of why you choose Pentaho PDI?
I don't have like a slide deck about that, but I can basically tell you that we definitely wanted open source. My company is a completely open source shop. We're lab all the way through PHP, MySQL, Apache, etc., all the way. And so we didn't really want to go the route of one of the more well-known names like a Cognos or whatever. So that was one. And secondly, we downloaded the software, sort of played with it a little bit, and felt like it was going to solve all of our needs. We don't really have, at our company, what we need to know is, what do our sales look like? How do they look when I look at them by ethnicity or by age group or by the tenure of the member? We didn't really have any need to do anything that was going to really be hitting an audience of thousands of people. My audience is my internal customers, which is maybe 25 or 30 people between executives, marketing, etc. And over the course of the 2 years that we've been using Pentaho, we re-upped after 1 year. We did a 1-year contract with them. We re-upped for 3, so we're very happy with them. And I'll talk a little bit later about some things that we've done that are not sort of standard sort of business intelligence things that have saved employees' time as well. But it was really, them or Jasper were really the two. And not much more than a coin flip, to be honest with you. But they've been great. We experimented with them long before. We had like a 4-month trial before we finally signed a contract, et cetera. So, okay, so the first thing I guess I want to show everybody is a transformation. And so this is a transformation I'm about to show you that is to, this came up actually about 3 months ago, and it was the task, maybe that's causing the reverb. The task was to get data to exact target about our members, because the marketing team wanted to be able to email people and tell them, hey, since the last time you came on the site, there have been this many people in your area who fit the profile criteria that you're interested in, or there are this many people who have actually viewed your profile. So you might want to go or this many people have sent you mail even. So it's a way for us to go externally to people's email through ExactTarget, and which is a third-party email company, and basically tickle them to say, come back and log into our site. The problem with that is the way that our database is set up is that we're sharded 4 ways. We have mainline user data, we have mail, internal mail, and then we have tracks and winks, which are like sort of breadcrumbs as people view you or they poke you. Winks for us is like a poke on Facebook. And that data lives in 3 different places. Now they happen to all live in the same data center in Waltham, but they could also be in different data centers. It's just coincidence that they happen to be in the same data center. And one option for that, and actually back when in our previous version of the software, there were many scripts that Shiri wrote that I sort of had to modify down the line. And Shiri would do a lot of scripts with Bash or Perl or whatever to grab data and create some loops and go fetch data. There's none of this that you can't do by writing a clever script, but it's so much easier and faster to do it this way. And then once it's built, you can actually get a junior person to modify it. So if you have to add a column or something. So this transformation is 4 steps. The first step is to get the source data from my mainline database. The second step is to look up buddies that have new photos. That was the requirement. So anybody that's in your buddy list, if they've put a new photo up since the last time you logged in, we're going to actually tell you about that. And then to get track list info, which is to show me the people who viewed me. And then at the end of it, to basically write that out to a table. This example is against a small data set I will show you. I don't know how to turn this one off. So, okay, so the source data is just a straightforward SQL statement. It is there a, the magic? There's a mute here, but I think that we need to, yeah. And there's volume. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I will try to stay away from that as much as I can. So this SQL statement is, if you do SQL, you know it's nothing crazy. It's a couple of joins, inner, and then 2 left joins. And all I'm doing is grabbing members who've logged in within the last 2 years and who have emails that are useful. Because those are the people that I sort of care about in the beginning. This particular one is running against a small database, but I want to show you quickly, sorry, Sherry, that this database is connected to, you can connect by many ways, by JDBC, by Jindy, all kinds of different ways. And they support pretty much any database you can think of. You can just see this list is not even complete. And actually, I could probably, I'm loud enough, I can try without this.
I think keep going. You're fine.
Okay.
There hasn't been too much feedback.
So, and the most recent version of Pentaho even has support for Hadoop and other big data. So in this case, it's just MySQL. It connects to a database on my network, to a database name by a port, username, and password. Simple. If you look through my list here of database connections, I have database connections all over, to mail, to demo databases, to data warehouses, etc. So in this case, you write the SQL statement, you can preview it right in this window. It'll come back and tell you, okay, this is what your SQL statement's going to look like. So now the next step, and in this statement, by the way, I grab all the information that I can get from the main database, which is things like your age, when you joined, when was the last time you logged in, what language do you use on the site, your email address, where your location is, what mail shard you're on. Like I said, we're sharded, so you can be on any one of 4 mail shards, etc. Don't worry about the details of that. It's just getting basic user data. So then in this step, this is a join. And it's a database join step. And you can do an outer join if you want. In my case, it's an inner join. And all that it is I'm saying for every member, so every of the 500 records that I got in that opening query, every one of them is going to come through one user at a time to here. And so this question mark is replaced by a column called subscriber key, which was in the first query. No big deal. And that will just tell me how many buddies, in my case, how many buddies have images that are on my buddy list. And I think this particular one doesn't have the date. It should also have the date. The next one will. And so I'll demonstrate this in a moment. The other one is track list. It's very similar. It's against a different database. Again, it doesn't even have to be MySQL, right? It could be a lookup against Microsoft SQL Server or some other, Oracle, anything you want. But the idea is that what's getting passed into this query is, show me all the people from this table who have viewed me, and their view date is greater than or equal to my last login. And so those get passed in. And the way Pentaho works is that it will get as much data as it can and stream to all those. So there's like hundreds of queries happening at the same time. It's all parallel. And there's actually, if anybody deals with hundreds of millions of records, there are ways to accelerate Pentaho, multi-processing, etc. I've never had to deal with that. So now I'm getting one other number. So I'm getting a column called track number here. I'm getting a column called buddy number here. And then at the end here, this is one of the write operations. It's called an insert update. It's the equivalent of, if you're a MySQL user, of insert into this table these values on duplicate key update. So it will create a new row. The subscriber key is the member ID. And it will create a new row if it doesn't exist. And if it does exist, it will just update any of the columns there. And if there are no changes, it just doesn't do an update. So just like insert on duplicate key update. And all of these things here, just to show you, if I take these all out of here, if I say get the update fields, it gets all of the fields that are in that stream that you saw earlier. So it really helps you. It's really UI focused. So you don't have to remember the column names and things like that. And then if you say that you're not interested in updating certain things, you can either take them out of this list or just switch the update to no. So not a big deal. And so, if I run this for 500 users, there's a little progress indicator at the bottom that tells me it fetched the 477 users because 23 of them were deleted accounts. And it's just fetching all their information, and then it will write them to the fact table. Again, it's not magic, but it's really easy to do, and honestly, this kind of thing can take 15 minutes to set up. It's really nothing to it. The hardest part of this is actually writing that SQL statement. So that's a basic idea. Now, there's other ways to do this, and in certain circumstances, you can get input from 3 data sources here at the same time, and then merge them together later. You sort them and you merge them after. There's a lot of different ways to do this. The way that I chose to do it is to do the lookups one at a time. Every night this job runs, the full job, it processes about 5 million users, which has to look up into this table, which is probably 120 million records, and this one's probably 80 million records. And that process takes about 2 hours. It runs while other things are running in Pentaho. It's never given me a problem. And at the end of this job, it actually takes the file and FTPs it to exact target. And it gets sent there, and then somebody has a job there that imports it, does whatever. I don't really care. So that's basically how ETL works. I just want to show you before I go to a kind of a demo of the end product. You can see here on the input tab that there are all kinds of ways to get input. For instance, you can get input from a CSV file or an Excel file if you want. And you may think, well, who would ever need to do that? Well, this is where I was going to give an example earlier, that my finance team, the CFO came to me and said, every day these guys spend an hour. They go onto the website for our payment processor. They go and they download a file. And then they take that file and they bring it into Excel, and then they do sortings and groupings to get all the USD transactions, and then the Australian dollars and the Brazilian, etc. And it's, fraught with error too, because they can do that wrong. And so he said, is there any way that we can automate that? And I used Pentaho to do that. It goes and gets the file by FTP, pulls it in, does some groupings, spits it into an Excel template, and then takes that template and emails it to the appropriate people internally. We stopped short of actually putting it directly into our finance database, mostly for time reasons and for personal fear of monkeying with a financial database. But that may happen at some point in the future. And in fact, if I can show you what that one looks like. So we get the data in here, and then where is it? Here's where the magic happens. Just to give you an idea of what kinds of things you can do. So I get the data from the Excel file, and I find transactions that are marked VT. I don't even know what that means, I don't care. It's just the requirement document said VT transactions go to a sheet on their own. And then this step waits, this block waits. And when it finds all the VT transactions, it writes them to the Excel file, and then it moves on. Then it gets the US transactions, it does a lookup. Now the magic here is that one thing that they couldn't do before is they would actually guess at the price of the plan. And with the way our system works, plan should be $12 for 90 days, but sometimes people get presented in the wrong currency, or it's a sale, or whatever, and so they were basically making guesses. Well, by having this available to me, I get the username, actually not the username, the transaction ID in here from the payment processor, and I can go actually look it up in my database. Not to guess, to find out exactly how much that user spent, what plan they spent it on, and how many days they were given. Because just the fact that you spent $6 on our site doesn't necessarily mean you got 7 days. You might be spending $6 in Brazilian real, and that gets you 30 days, etc. So that's what this lookup does. I do a sort and a group, select, and I write it out to the Excel file. And this is pretty much instantaneous every day. Anyway, that's a little parenthetical side note. So this is a quicker, shorter version, and I'm going to show you some of the cool visual stuff in about 3 minutes, so bear with me. I don't want to be doing a lot of talking. I want to show you cool stuff, and I will in a second. So this is a trimmed down version of my daily job that runs to build my fact sales table, and dimensions as well, but in this case just the fact sales table. And again, there's no super magic here. This one actually is just from one data source, but I just do this is a sample, it's not the full query, but this query is just selecting from my transactions table, and I do a limit of 500 for the purposes of this demonstration, and I just look for yesterday's transactions, nothing major there. I then do a lookup, because one of the things that we want to do in our fact table is I want to assign people to an age group. I can know what age they are, and if you're 27, that's fine, but I want to know that you're in the 26 to 34 age group. So I have a small little lookup table called Manhunt Age Groups that for every single user, I just look to see if they're between that range, and I assign everybody to an age group. And you'll see how that manifests itself in a second. And one other one I showed you guys here, I look up the time dimension, the way that, that we have there's one table which has every date going back 5 years and ahead 10 years. And essentially all I do is I look up the ID of that date. because I don't want to do, it's faster to look up on an ID rather than on a date. And so I put the time value into this time ID is what goes into my fact table. And one of the things that I can't talk about here, but that is important in data warehousing, is the time dimension is one of the most important ones, because it's one of the ones that's hierarchical, so that months contain quarters, which contain, years contain quarters, which contain months, which contain days. Weeks can span over years, months, days, etc. But the time dimension is a really special dimension in data warehousing. And so if you saw the table, the dim time table, you would see that there's a date and then a long month, January, and a short month, Jan, and then a long date and a short date, etc. And you'll see those in a minute. But all I'm doing is looking up the value that corresponds to a date. And then here, this was something that we added after the fact, long after we built the initial sales table. And essentially all that I do in the very first query, I find out how many hours it's been since you joined our site. And you may have joined 10 years ago, and we have members who have been on our site for 10 years religiously and still members, and some people joined very recently. And the idea here was to assign people who joined within a day, people who joined within whatever, probably 7 days, 30, 90, whatever these work out to. And you'll see these in a minute visually. But essentially, based on the number of hours since you joined, I can assign a tenure value, 1 through 6. And then later, when we're looking at sales, I could say, well, show me my sales yesterday based on tenure. And it'll tell me these sales are attributable to people who just joined, these are people who joined 5 years ago, etc. It's just another way of putting a fact in there that will later connect to a dimension. And then, lastly, I just write to the table. Not much to it. You see the database fields. I put the field mapping. It will show me the source fields from my stream, which I collected all in here, and the target fields of my table. In my case, I made them all the same, so I don't even have to specify this, but they could be different names, and you could either assign them. So if I had UID here, or profile ID here, I could assign them. You can make it guess, and it'll guess the best ones, and then you can adjust from there. No big deal. So this sales, there's no magic here to watch, but I will show you the end result in a second. So it runs through, it's showing the progress bar down here. There is all kinds of logging, I should point out. I'm on very basic logging, but there's logging of every step in here, so if there's ever a problem, you could turn on really detailed logging, and it will show you every retrieval, every lookup, etc. So, when you're all done with this, you end up having a fact table. My dimension tables already exist. And so, as an example, age groups, right? Age group 2 means between 24 and 35, whatever. So you now still have to build a cube, right? Which is a data warehousing sort of concept of the data exists in the middle as a fact table, a simple star schema. There's a fact table in the middle and all these dimension tables that sit out to the side. And so Pentaho tries to help you, and they do a reasonably good job. If you take your output step here, I'll show you how this works. You can right-click on this and hit Visualize. And what it will do is open up assuming it works, and there you go. It will open up a window here, and it has basically taken every numeric value in my table and thinks that it's a measure, something that I can count, like a sale, right? And then took everything else and thinks that it's a dimension. And so you can actually use this to quickly just take a peek at what your data looks like. So for instance, if I take, let's see, the amount column and drag that in here, it will then show me the amount of sales for that day. Now, if I want to see the count of sales, these are all, just by default, they're all sums. So if I want to see the count, I can switch to this other window, which is the same data. I look at my measures, and let's just say I want to count every transaction here. So instead of sum, I do count over here. And I save this. I go back to the Visualize window, and I think I have to refresh it over here. And if that worked right, I'm about to show you the way that I actually do it. I really don't use this tool, but the idea with Agile Business Intelligence, which is what Pentaho is selling, is that you can do things and quickly just take a look at how they might look here, and then go and fine-tune later. So if I did it right, the transaction ID, if I bring that in here, will be a count of transactions, not a sum. Right. So there were 500 transactions for $13,733. Now, if I'm interested in seeing those transactions by ethnicity, I drag the ethnicity dimension, and that comes in here. Now, these don't mean anything to anyone here because these are codes that relate to white, black, Latino, Asian, etc. Later, you'll see how to do that, but just understand that I have a small table that has 10 rows in it with ID 55 equals white, ID 56 equals black, etc. So, but in this quick agile way, you can kind of get a sense of like, well, now what if I wanted to see it also based on the, where's the age? And again, this is the age ID, not the age of the member, but the people in the group of 18 to 24. I know that there are 2 transactions for $17 in the group 18 to 24 and whatever this ethnicity is, which is maybe white, I don't know. And the way that this tool works, you'll see in a second, is you can put the dimensions on the top or on the bottom, look at them in as many different ways as you want. So this is just the quickie version. I'm going to show you the actual sales cube that our executives use at Online Buddies. And if I did it right, it should be back here. May have timed out, I might have to relog into it, but this would have sent this cube here. I will show you on the right side first. We have 3 measures in our database. We're counting the number of transactions, the sales in the local currency, and the sales in US dollars, right? So whoever is interested can be looking at whatever means something to them. Marketing people care more about how many subscriptions they sold than the dollar amount. And then this is, there's a couple filters on here. I'm only looking at 2012. The month, I'm excluding May because it's not complete yet, and it'll screw up my graphs in a minute. And then this is top 10 countries, okay? And some of the really neat things, this is all drag and drop. So if I'm not interested in looking at it by country, I can actually take this and drag it out of the report, put it in the trash. And instead, now this is on a, I'm going to say roughly 6 million record database. Just to, so, you know, when there's these little delays waiting for the data to load, that's the reason. Pentaho has some weird caching mechanism that it does, so when somebody has already loaded the data, it's faster for the next person who does it until the next day when the caches are cleared. But now I'm able to look at the same dollar value, the same amounts for January through April, but now I'm looking at it by platform. Did people make their purchase on one of these apps? Did they do it through our mobile application? We're going to find out that most people here have done it through the website, www. And then Vindicia is our repayment processor. These are rebills for people whose subscriptions are renewing. And so if you say, well, I'm kind of interested in seeing this data graphically, you can switch out to the line chart, and you see a line chart that shows you the data in all these different ways. Now, the lines down here, because they're so low in dollar value, they don't show up very well compared to www transactions. But an example, if you were the person responsible for marketing the mobile applications, you might say, well, you know what, I'm going to filter this. So I'm going to drag platform in here. It should take just a second, and it's going to show me I think it's 7 platforms. And maybe you only care about the iPhone app, the Android app, and our mobile app that sort of mimics those, but isn't truly an app. You don't have to go to a store to buy it. So if you look at just these 3, same data is now being filtered down, but only showing me those 3. And now if I go look at it as a line chart, it sort of is a little bit more meaningful to me. And so I can say, wow, we did really well in April on mobile GPS sales. I wonder why that is. And they tie that back to marketing or whatever kinds of things they did. You can look at this in any number of ways. I mean, there's area charts, of course, which are the same data. You can look at it as a stacked column, if you care. You can look at it as 100%. So if you're interested more in percentage than you are in total numbers, they do them as bars as well, sideways. Same thing, stacked. If you're interested in seeing them as pie charts, maybe you care about pie charts, and they'll show you by month. Maybe you don't want to see the apps separated like this. You want to see January, February, March, and April, right? So they make it really easy to do by you just swap the axes here. So instead of my additional pies being platforms, I'm going to make my additional pies years and months and make the platforms the slices. And so I just take that and switch the axes. There's a little warning about years and months have to be on the same axis. And now you're seeing it by month, and you get a sense maybe January, February, March, oh wow, in April, it looks like we're increasing the percentage that is from mobile GPS or whatever. If you decide, even in this view, you don't want to look at it by platform, but you're more interested in it, looking at it by ethnicity. Remember before we just had random numbers for ethnicity, 55, 56? Well, now it's going to bring in ethnicity, and ethnicity is actually going to be words, human readable words, that are more meaningful than just some random number, of course. And so the only other one that I want to quickly demonstrate is the date hierarchy, because while this is loading, I'll explain some of these other ones. So we can track report by transaction type, credit card, check, money order, boleto in Brazil. By plan type, is it a 7-day plan, a 30, a 90? Platform we already saw. Whether or not they bought a rebuild plan or not. Sometimes we do sales and we force people to buy rebuild plans to get the sale. The rebuild source platform is the newest thing that's in here. And that was somebody in marketing who asked, well, it's good to know that we have most of our money comes from rebuilds, but I don't know, how do I track those rebuilds back to the original platform or person? So if you join my website through a mobile phone, I want to sort of track that you were a mobile phone user, and all of your sales forever will track back to that. So on any given day, you might have rebilled through Vindicia, our payment processor, but I can really attribute that sale to a join from mobile, that kind of thing. Tenure we talked about a few minutes ago, it's just how long you've been a member of the site. And so you see it becomes human readable. So what I'll show you is how this gets created. Again, this is just by way of demonstration. I'm not trying to teach anybody anything. I'm just trying to show you how these tools work. There is...
How many tools have we seen so far?
So far, thank you, good question. So far you've seen the PDI, which is the data integration. That was the one that had the connected blocks in a stream to pull data from different data sources. And then that tool there is called the Pentahos User Console, which is a way to visually represent the data that's in your data warehouse. So that's two. I'm about to show you the second of the design tools. If you see here, they have a handful of design tools, two of which I've actually never needed to use or have used, the aggregation designer and metadata editor. I can't exactly tell you what this is, but the metadata editor I know is if you have users that you want to be able to do ad hoc queries of your data, but you don't want to tell them, okay, well, when you're looking for platform, it's called platform_ID, and it's in this table. Like, they're never going to know that, right? Because they're not database people. So the metadata editor puts a layer on top of it that's just like mobile device, something really, easy to understand. And so it helps them to query the data in a way that's a little bit simpler. But what I'm about to show you now is this Schema Workbench. And the Schema Workbench, I took the liberty of pre-populating 2 dimensions in it, and I want to add 2 more now. So first I will show you the one I've built already, and then we'll tie these back in a second. So I built a cube for the demo, which is the mini version of my sales cube, right? So I've got counts and dollars. I put cha-ching just to show you that you can make it say anything you want. It doesn't have to be the column name, right? It can be something more human-friendly. Then I have ethnicity, age, and then for now just months. And so remember there was about 400, 500 sales in here, so I think we put this in here. Yeah, there's our data. And we looked at it before by ethnicity, and then we could look at it by age. We could put age along the top instead. However, we care to look at this data, right? If I only am interested in the dollars, I can remove that. And there's some really, really, really cool things that this tool does that I'm going to show you in 5 minutes, but I want to save that for towards the end because they're really pretty impressive. So when I go back to the Schema Workbench here, here's my demo cube. And let me get this to maximize. Okay. So all I've told my cube is that my fact table is called fact sales demo, nothing magical there. And I have an ethnicity dimension. These are dimensions. And the dimension has a top level category and then a hierarchy and a level. I won't bore you with what all those are. But essentially, if you see here, the top level says, what is the foreign key in my fact table? And so in this case, my fact table, the foreign key, here's my sales demo table, and the foreign key in this case is ethnicity, which is an integer, right? That was at 55, 56, etc. Then here, I said, okay, now I'm going to create a hierarchy, and I'm assigning this table to the hierarchy. So I have a table called dim ethnicity, which I think has like 10 rows in it or something. And all I'm telling Pentaho here is that with the dim ethnicity table, the lookup is a column called ETHID. And that column has a last updated time, which almost never changes, and a name. So this would be 55 white, 56 black, 57 Latino, etc. And then lastly, the level itself. This is where I can sort of make it what the ultimate representation is going to be to the user. So the name I want to give it, there's a description here. If they hover over those dimensions, that description will tell them what it means. Which column in the table am I interested in using? Because my dimension table has 3 columns. So in my case, I'm interested in using name, because that's the one that's human friendly. And then what field types are they, et cetera. No big deal. And then, so what I'm going to do now is show you just to add, if I want to add age as a dimension, I say add dimension. This is going to be age. My foreign key in my fact table is the age ID, and it's a standard dimension. There's 2 types, standard and date. We'll get to date in a minute. My hierarchy, I'm just going to call it age again. I don't know if that's good nomenclature or not. And now I have to tell it what table defines this hierarchy. So I say add table, and it's connected to my database already. And so I just tell it I'm interested in the MH age groups table. And actually, let me show you. That's all the age groups table is. No magic. Remember dim ethnicity? Let's see. Might be dim ethnicity. I forget. Oh, I spelled it wrong. All right, so that was the lookups for all that. So there's no major magic there. So now I tell, okay, MH age groups is my table. Now I add a level. I'm going to call it level age. You'll see what levels mean in a second. And back here, I just have to tell it, remember, I picked my primary key here, which was age ID, and now what's the foreign key here? Or actually vice versa, foreign key to the primary key. So the primary key in my lookup table is the age ID. Piece of cake. Now I go to the level, and I can put in, I can select which column I want to display to the user. In my case, it's age group. If you remember back here, I'm going to display this column here, the age group column. And it's a string. And it's a regular dimension. And then I'm going to add one more. So right now, the one I just showed you only shows by month. So I'm going to also add by date. And in order to do that, this is now a hierarchical dimension. So you see I have a date dimension here. Right now I have a level called months. I'm already connected to my dim time table. All the connections between the fact and the dimension table are done. So now all I do is say I'm going to add a level. I'm going to say add day. The column in my table, I'm going to say is the day of the year, right, which is 1 through 365 or 6. That is the actual column. That's the one that will place it in the right order when I'm looking at it. But then I can also say, well, what do you want displayed to the user? So in this case, I'm going to say day of year, and I'll just put time date in there for now. It's the full timestamp. It is a there. Anyway, here now this is where it's not just a regular dimension. In this case, it's a time days dimension. And these are all hierarchical. Years contain half years, contain quarters, contain months, etc. And by doing that, if anybody, how many people here sort of have read about or studied the kind of concepts of data warehousing, just conceptually like this? You know what tuples are? It's like if you think of a Rubik's Cube, and it's got 3 by 3. Well, if I put these, the order, time, day of year, and month, etc., it puts everything in order. So it knows that a month, if you go back 30 days, it knows to go back exactly 30 positions within that cube to go and find that day. And if you say, I'm interested, I'll show you in a minute, in the trend. How am I doing this month versus the same month last year, it knows, okay, that means I've got to go to the part of the Rubik's Cube that is months and then go back 12 positions. It's just a little magic that the data warehousing community all knows about. But all I do is save this. Hopefully this will work. Live demos, you know how these things are. I'm publishing it to my server, which is out in Waltham. Port 8080 is the default port. I have a password that I can use to publish. And then this tells me where do you want to put it. I have all these different folders I've created. In my case, I'm just going to put it in the root folder. I have created a data source already through another tool you're about to see called the Enterprise Console. But essentially, I create a data source on my local machine, and I create one with the same exact name on the server, and then it knows where that exists. So you can actually develop off of data source A, which might be local on your laptop, and then publish to the server. As long as it has the same name, they could point to two different places. It doesn't really matter. So that's all that is. But anyway, I publish with no errors. Unbelievable. And now if I refresh here, I'm refreshing the repository cache, which is my way of forcing Pentaho to go and read the repository. And I forgot to mention the repository. It's a great feature. I'll tell you in a minute. So now, unless I did something wrong, let me see here. Ethnicity, months, age. Let me start from the top here. I must have put it in the wrong place. Let me publish this one more time. 402, I'm putting it in the root folder. It's called Kettle. Refresh again. So this demo is not here, and I don't know why. Such as a live demo, but trust me, it's that easy, I promise. And so if I were able to bring that up right now again, I would be able to show you that now that instead of month, there's month and day. Instead of just ethnicity, there's also age. So real quick, I want to go back. The first tool that I showed you, which was the data integration tool, this I know for a fact is something that you only get in the enterprise version, which is that you can use any multiple kinds of repositories. So do people here use Git or SVN? What do you guys use for your? So they have their own, you can actually, if you really know what you're doing, you can kind of connect to those as well. But they have their own internal repository. It can be file-based or it can be database-based. They have their own Hyperion database, I think, that runs. But it's pretty cool because it's actually saved me a few times when I've made a change that I didn't intend. So, let's see, did I close that other tool? Here we are. I think I closed the data integration tool. I'm going to bring that back up. But what it does is it will save, every time you save a transformation that you're working on, it will ask you to put in a comment. So if you work off of the ticketing system like Jira, you can put in a Jira ticket. You can just put in any old comment that you want. And the repository is a great way to sometimes even go back and see the state that you were at a while ago, but I just want to demonstrate it to you. It's pretty cool. So if I go to explore my repository here, if I go back to, for instance, that exact target job I was telling you guys about, and I look at, actually let me get a better example. How about the sales cube? Here's my sales cube. I migrated the sales cube over to here not too long ago, so the rest of the history is in an old repository, which I can also show you. But it's going to show me every commit that I made to that sales cube. In some cases, I don't bother putting a comment because it's just something very, very minor, or it's a step along the way. But sometimes, like here, I added platform ID and tenure ID. So it helps me go, if I want to go back to the version before that, I can just double click that version. And then we'll open up a version of the transformation as it existed back then. So it's really, really very helpful. All right, so let me show you some of the cool stuff. So if I look at, and go back to the demo I gave before, which is our sales cube, top 10 by month, right? And for the purposes of this example, I'm going to keep only the United States. Actually, I'll keep only Australia. And I'm going to include the year 2011 as well, because I want to get a little bit more data to show everybody. And
Can you lower these lights?
oh, I sure can, of course. I wish you had asked me sooner. I have the power.
Yeah.
I meant to do that sooner, I apologize. So what they put in the newest version, which is 4.2, I think, is some new ways of visualizing data in line. Does anybody know who Edmund Tufte is? He's kind of a guru of
The quantitative analysis works.
Exactly, and he's like a guru of data visualization, and he created this concept called the spark line, which is kind of a graph that's in your data. It's not a graph that's over here and your data's over here. It's actually in your data. Well, they've actually made those automatic. So if you look at this information here, I'm going to close the filters down. You can do a data bar in green, which is a built-in graph that shows you your highest value and your lowest value. But if you took the numbers away and you just ran this graph like this, you get a sense of the trend on that data. It's pretty cool. You can do instead of that, you can do a green, yellow, red, kind of almost like a heat map to show the months that you did the best on the darkest green and the months you did the worst on the darkest red, and then transitions all the way through. So that's kind of cool. I was telling you earlier about comparing trends. So the couple things I want to show you in this tool, which is, to me, the best thing about Pentaho is this tool. Because once you create the data, your consumer, your user, can look at it in any way that is meaningful to them. So if I want to do, for instance, a simple running total, and my choice is I can total rows or columns. In this case, I only have Australia, so it doesn't matter. But you could total right this way or down. And all this is going to do is put in a running total. So it's going to give me the total sales as well. If I'm interested in, how about a trend number? So I can do year over year. So the period is going to be in years. I'm going to go back 1 year. And what I'm going to do first is show the value from the prior period. The trend was added based on summary metrics. Let me get this one out of here. That is totally, I think I can't put those two in the same visualization. So trend number, year over year, who cares what it's called, years, and I want to show the value from the prior period. So in each one of these cases, it's going to go back and show me in a column here the value from January of the prior year. And it looks like this is, right, because we weren't billing in Australia. We only started billing in Australia at a later date. So if you look at the months that are more mature, you can see how we're doing compared to the prior year. So that's the value, but if you want to, you can also then change it to, well, I'm not interested in seeing the value. I want to see the, whoops, come on, the percentage change or something. Oops.
Yeah, you error things up for a second.
Oh, I sure can, yeah. I'm not sure what that last error was. I could probably reproduce
So
it.
that the field needs to.
Yeah, I can do it again. It was just me being a dumbass, really. So if I take this out of the report. So I'm going to go again. I'm going to say put in a trend number and show me I'm going to show the delta. Based on years, the delta from the prior period to 2 decimal places. The next time an error comes up, I promise I'll leave it there for a second. But yeah, so this is just showing the change from the prior year. So if you're interested in seeing that, it's kind of a cool thing to be able to do if you're, finance or whatever. Let me see. There's one other one I wanted to show you. You can of course do calculated numbers. So in this particular sales cube, I have the number of sales and the dollar amount. So I could just calculate the difference between the two and it'll give me an average sale, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to show you a couple of those things. Okay, now let me just make sure I stay on point here. So I wanted to show you my stuff. I don't really focus on how good it looks, how fancy it is, but I just want to give you a quick demo with some of the things that are in the Pentaho samples. And so you look here, this is based on their sample data. What they've done here is instead of showing, and I'm going to not see where it is, give me a second. They've broken it, because I have to edit it. I'm going to edit this instead of just doing it. What they've done is they've broken out every product line into its own chart instead of showing it all in one chart. And so, I saw this earlier. It was someplace, it's like group the charts together but don't group them together. I don't know why I'm not seeing it right now. My apologies. Here it is. So this is now showing me that they've broken the charts out by product line. So in their case, ships and trucks and buses, etc. So the same data represented on just one chart would look like that. And so just kind of an idea of the kinds of things. They have these concepts called dashboards, which require you to be, you can just do a very simple dashboard that just embeds the pre-made reports that you can get from Pentaho. So for instance, my sales cube earlier, I had a grid and then I had a chart. Well, you can take those two and put them side by side so a person can look at both. That kind of thing. That's a dashboard in their terminology. Now they have really fancy dashboards.
Are the legends overlapping?
Yeah, on this, one of the downsides to this tool is that these legends, you don't have granular control over making these different sizes or only showing every fifth one. It's in the product pipeline, but it's not there yet. But just understand, I'll show you a couple of examples. They also have a third design tool called the Report Designer. So if you ever use Crystal Reports or anything like that, it's sort of their sort of ghetto version of Crystal Reports. It's pretty functional. It's got a lot of good stuff to it. And on that one, you can actually be more specific about the sizes of the fonts. Do you want them to be vertical instead of diagonal? Remember, this tool is for kind of an end user inside your company to be able to visualize their data really dynamically, and it's not really designed to be an end product that maybe you would embed in a application that a customer would see, for instance, right? A true customer, somebody that's paying you money. Whereas if you wanted to do something like that and it had to be perfect, you would either use the report designer that Pentaho gives you, or J-free reports, or some of the other third-party report designers that are really more functional, fully functional. So the one I wanted to show is actually this one. So these reports, these are all linked, right? So right now I'm looking at everybody. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click APAC, which stands for Asia Pacific. And you'll see that when I do that, the charts all change. So now I'm looking at a bar chart for Asia Pacific and a line chart for Asia Pacific, etc. Do not even ask me how they do that. I'm going to guess it's like they got some crazy JavaScript behind this. This is built with a tool called J-free, the report designer. It's too esoteric for me. My customers don't care. They just want to get to the data. They do have, I experimented with this, we never actually launched it. Oh, I don't have the license on here. This is just telling me I don't have the license key on this machine. But what they can do is take geographic data, and actually, like in this case, if this were working, you would see a map, and you would see pins based on sales of different colors. So they can use Google Maps API to actually overlay, they can do, what do they call those, the circles that are larger or smaller based on the number of members, and then colored based on the dollar value of those members, et cetera. And I will show you in a minute this report, but this is based on the Report Designer tool, which I haven't shown you yet. But this lets you put in some buttons here to decide which line you want, for instance, and then which product you care about and what output format do you want. So in this case, if I'm interested in motorcycles, and I only care about the Suzuki X Rio, and I want to view it as a PDF, that this will now be a report that will come out as a PDF that I can use for whatever my nefarious purposes are. You can also export these reports to Excel. See, now some people sort of are so tied to Excel they can't use anything else. The reports will go into Excel, as you see here. It's not perfect, but you know, it's good enough if somebody wants data spit out that way. And then I had two last ones, and I'm almost done here. I'm sensitive to everybody's time. Okay. So internally, what we've done is a lot of reports are available only to the kind of executives and people in finance and marketing. And actually, I should say marketing, finance. But other reports are just available more generally. So let me figure out how to get my menu back. I was trying to create screen real estate here, so I did not. There you go. Here we go. All right. So we have an internal application that we use to do approvals for our members' photos and hats, et cetera, which is what this tool is. And what I did was I built a really simple portal to Pentaho, which is in here. And all it is a way to navigate through the various reports. So I have login reports, reports about sales, reports for paid members, et cetera. There's two that I wanted to show you specifically. The first one is joins by platform.
In here.
You can do, that's a really good question. You can do reports against already existing data, like an OLTP database. They don't have to be against any kind of special queue, or you can do them against a queue. All of the time, whenever I use the report designer, it's almost, in fact, not almost always, it's always against, it's not true. It's sometimes against OLTP, but it's pretty much against my data warehouse, which is data that I've probably already aggregated in some way. But sometimes it's against actual raw data as well. Okay. Logins by age group. Okay. So here's logins, and if I want to do logins, the report login by age group, this is a really simple example of I'm able to show the data either, in this case, there's only two options. Your choices are, you want to see total logins or distinct logins by day. And so on our site, if we do total by day, we generally get a little bit over 1 million logins per day, about 1,000,001 per day. And this chart, it's a little hard to read here, maybe I can make that a little larger if you want. Should be able to make it a little more readable. It's logins by day, but also broken down by age group. So it's a way that they can tell certain times. This actually was a data anomaly when we had a problem after a release, but they wanted me to leave it there. I didn't fix the data. So that's what this report is showing. So I just wanted to show you an example of a dynamic report. The reason is that when you select, in this report, when you select total versus distinct, the only thing that's happening different is that the query is querying a different column in the table. So I think I could probably, in about a minute, show you that, how that works. So this is now the third tool that I'm going to show you, which is the report designer. Okay, so what report is that? That was logins by age group. Let's see if they're on here. Let's see. Here you go. So in terms of the query itself, there is no fixed query here. It's dynamic based on what you select. So that button that you saw earlier is come on, where is it? It's a parameter in this report. Really simple parameter called columns to use, which is nothing more than distinct or total. This is based on a query that I created up above. And that query is just selecting from a table that literally has two columns in it, distinct or total. There's nothing to it. It's just a way of displaying two buttons for people. But where the magic happens in this report is, instead of it being a fixed query, which I'll show you in a second, what this is a dynamic query. And so, based on what the person has selected, my query, it goes against the same table, fact logins by age group, joined to my Manhunt age groups lookup table, so it's a fact to a dimension table. And the only difference is, which column do I use? So this is building a dynamic SQL statement and then executing that SQL statement, depending on what button the person has chosen. So you can do that kind of thing. And an example of a fixed report, which doesn't have fancy dynamic SQL, which is you just put your data in the query. So this particular report here just selects from registration, joins the platform IDs where date registered is greater than a certain date. So you can do the reports either way. All right, last one. Back to my little, I always refer to as my ghetto portal here. This report here has more than one selector. So you have, this particular one has a single select drop-down list, a date range, and then states if you're interested. So if you are the person who is responsible for marketing in Chile. Why isn't Chile in this list? That's weird. What? All right, we'll pick another country. I have no idea why Chile is not in there. All right, let's pick another reasonably large country for us. How about Canada? Canada will work. So I select Canada, then I can select my date range. So I'm interested in February 1st, let's say, to today. And the report, if I tell it all places, will now display how many active users in Canada for every single day. And this is an example of the question you asked earlier. And this one I was able to actually tell it to space out. So you're not overlapping one another. I could also have turned these sideways and more of them will show up. But what this report is telling my business users is that in Canada, every single day, this is how many people are logging into my system who have been active within the last 90 days. So it gives them a sense of whether we're having attrition or growth in our usage. And if I care more specifically, and I only care about Manitoba, then I can just look at Manitoba. And so, for all I know, they did some marketing campaign in Manitoba, I don't know, but I don't particularly care about that sort of thing. So, I believe that there was only. This one is not one of mine, it's one of theirs. And it is called Territory Sales. Analysis. Here it is. Territory Sales. I was just poking through some of these. This is the one that we saw earlier, so you can subgroup as well in here I wanted to show. So they don't have to be totals. You can actually subgroup them as well. And it's all done through the UI. You just do right-click, grouping, etc., and then you can view these all dynamically. Then that's it, yeah. So you'll have to forgive me because I'm not this is not a presentation that I've given like 40 times. I don't have this like in my back pocket. I sort of just crafted this hoping to show you as many different things as I could. And the intention was not really to teach anyone anything, but more just to show you all the different things that can be done. So I guess I'll open the floor to some questions. Yeah, of course.
Got two
Sure.
related questions. Yes. You said the speed of the processing is something like 200 milli rows per 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess with that type of processing power, how many powerful machines are you running the jobs? And
We weren't running everything off of one server, and we have a failover server just in case that one crashes. But we run everything from one server. If you go, actually, and I should tell everybody that if you want to take, I have the business cards for the fellow who's the regional sales rep, and they're really not that bad. They don't hound you too badly. So if you want to ask some questions, if you ask them, they'll let you download the enterprise version for 30 days, so you can play with the full version, etc., or longer if you're really nice to them. But they have some mechanism that I really don't know about, but that you can use multiple machines to process the same data. There's one transformation that I have, a PDI transformation, where I actually run it, I should have shown this to you earlier, but so I get, first set of data, I get 100,000 records from query one, and now I've got to go and look up the data from those 100,000 records. Right in line, you can right-click number of copies, and what it can do is it can spawn as many as you can handle. So you can spawn like 5 lookups. I should actually show you, it's so simple. I won't actually do it, but I just want to show you how easy it is, where it is. When you're doing, all that loads up, I'll bring this back up again. And so, but I will tell you that for me, it takes 2 hours to do that one transaction, which is 5 million records in the source and maybe 100 million in the 2 others. That's 2 hours. I've heard of people who have transformations that on scripts that they've written in Perl or something that take a day and a half. A place that I interviewed at a few years ago, they said that they had jobs that actually were a problem because they were taking longer than 24 hours and they needed to run every 24 hours. So,
related question. So Pentaho is great for if the data source itself is somehow structured, meaning there's a table which to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I assume your company has weblogs, right? Do you guys do weblog processing at all, and what tools do you use?
It's a good question. We don't do it with Pentaho. We've written some internal scripts to process like the Symphony logs and the Apache error logs to show like the most common errors that are in the log and things like that. I'm going to presume that a lot of that stuff can be done with Pentaho as well. Because you can actually, the data source doesn't have to be a database. The data source can be a text file. It can be comma-separated, tab delimited. It has to be structured in some way, I would imagine. So something like an Apache log is a little unstructured for a tool like this to probably be able to read easily. So I don't know that would be the best use, but. So in this example here, where I'm doing get user info, I'm looking up one user at a time. I could change number of copies to start, tell it 5. It puts a little X5 up there, and it will launch 5 of these at a time. And one other thing that I should point out, one second, Heidi, is that if I get, let's say, 100,000 records from here, and I'm doing 3 subsequent lookups, even though they appear on this chart to be one after the other, they're really not. They're all happening simultaneously. If you do more than one get, you can get data in 3 or 4 different places and run multiple streams at the same time. And they can be independent of one another, or they can merge later. So there's a lot of possibility, but I don't know how to make it run for hundreds of millions of rows. It's not, like I said earlier, it's not what I need for my business, so I don't bother getting really esoteric and trying to figure out how to solve those problems that I don't have. I don't have enough time for that, frankly. Okay.
This is great, the visual tool. You say that you schedule it in more than 2 hours. You don't want to, if you have a holiday or you go on vacation, what's the tool that allows it to do an at job, batch job, cron job?
Yep. Thanks for mentioning that. I should have shown. Whenever you have one of these transformations here that you build, you right here you hit action schedule, and it's got to be saved before scheduling. Action schedule. I must have moved some. Oh, I changed it to by 5 to run 5 streams. So thanks, I changed it. And you can tell it to run every number of seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, etc. You can tell it to run forever. You can tell it how much logging to put in. If there are parameters that you're passing into the report, you can put them in here. So to answer your question, we're still migrating from the original server, which is in Cambridge, to the ones in Waltham. So I have about half my jobs in both places. But in Waltham, this is the Waltham scheduler. And so these are jobs that run, in some cases they run every couple of minutes. In other cases they run once a day. This global collect is something that runs to the finance team just once a day, but we have some problems with people who join our site and try to spam our members. Those run more frequently. And those jobs, there's a real problem that we had. What they do is they find anybody that joined, and then it's one example, find anybody that's joined within the last 5 minutes. And what we were finding is that people were joining and then sending messages with a bit.ly URL in the message to our users, and then trying to get them to click the URL, etc. And so this job just runs, and every 5 minutes it finds anybody who joined and anybody that sent a bit.ly URL inside one of our messages. It puts their account on hold, and it notifies the customer service team. So if a person, I can't think of a reason that somebody would legitimately do that, but if they did, they could contact customer service and get their account taken off hold. But it's a way to sort of prevent our members from getting spammed. And there's 3 different flavors of that here.
So is that just a nice tie into MySQL events, or is it in
Cron. So if you go and look at well, I shouldn't say that, I take it back. We have a couple of jobs on the server that we have written little shell scripts to fire transformations. We have 2 examples of that. And I think it may have just been because initially we didn't trust this scheduler. I'm not really sure, we should get those out of there. But anyway, the answer is they have an internal database that fires off jobs at given intervals. And there's an audit trail. I didn't show you the enterprise console, I'll do that in a second, but there's an audit trail that will show you every time one of these ran, there's a log for every day that you can go and inspect. What we've done in our place is, I have a lot of jobs that will fill a fact table for a day, and there's nothing that's baked into Pentaho that will tell me, it'll tell me that the job ran, but that doesn't really tell me that I've populated the data that I wanted, right? Because maybe the source file wasn't there or whatever. So we've written a bunch of Nacho scripts in our case that will just go and check like the platform logins table. And if it looks and there's ever less than 1 million records in the platform logins table for a day, I know that, and not total records, but a sum of that column, then I know something didn't run because we always have 1 million logins in it. So
did the other scripts not run then?
if I find out that that's not the case, that it's not there, then maybe something, let's see, it could be any number of things. It could be that the scheduler somehow got disabled. So that would be a clue for me to go and check, did my other jobs all run? I could go look at the log. There's an audit log that shows me that they all ran. Maybe I changed something yesterday. I don't have a really great QA process for all of this.
So it's a long weekend, and one of your steps gets errors and doesn't complete. Do the rest of them still run?
No, if you have a transformation, well, it kind of depends. I guess if you had a transformation, let's say that had 2 parallel streams, and this one stream here had an error, the second stream would still continue and finish. So only the one above would fail. But a lot of times, in my case anyway, they're all kind of interdependent. So if one fails, it's kind of like all fails, you know. And then I end up, because you could miss one step, like the lookup step, to get the age groups of the member. If the day before I deleted a record accidentally out of the manhunt age groups table, then every time I'm going to look up the code for 18 to 24 and it's not there, I'm getting back a null. And that's what I'm putting in my fact table. That wouldn't show up as an error, right? Because there's still a record going into the fact table, but it's not what I expect. So, you know, we have all kinds of nodules alerts that check for expected data. And frankly, these are used so often that if ever there's a problem, the data anomaly I showed you guys earlier with the logins, that big spike, that was actually on a release. A couple of hours after the release, I said, something's wrong because my job that runs every 15 minutes to collect platform logins is showing an enormous number of logins, and it took us several hours before we find the bug. And we had people that were in a loop logging in repeatedly on their mobile phone. And so sometimes this actually points out errors that we didn't find in QA, dev, or staging, you know, through our QA process. Did you have a follow-up?
It's just that I was wondering if it needed ties into Puppet, or have you thought of tying into Puppet?
We do not, in our case, we do not tie this into Puppet at all, other than the installation. So we have the installation of, so this runs as services on the server. So the BI console, which I should show you, starts up as a service, but only the installation of it, not the job scheduler and things like that. It's if I had a staff and time, I would probably try to attack all of these things that you're bringing up. It's just, I don't, and frankly, it really, I'm telling you, it almost never ever fails. And if it does, it's generally because I made a change that broke something unexpected that I didn't think of. It almost never fails. Let me just show you the enterprise console, which I think I can do from this machine. I think, oh, hold on in here. Look it up the old way, 8088. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we used to spend, and this dates back, I think, even to your days, Heidi, we used to spend, people in the marketing team would spend a day to a day and a half every week. Our company is very closely held. It's by 2 gentlemen who own the company, and every Tuesday they come in and every department has to give all of their presentations about how things were. And so we have this concept of the Tuesday reports. So Monday morning, there would be all these little scripts that would run that some DBA or whatever has written to fill these tables. And then somebody would have to go and take them and like dump them into Excel tables and then roll up the Excel tables and then send them out to sales and to marketing. And then they would use that to create their own charts and graphs. It's a nightmare. And so there's a lot of manpower. We've now automated those. And the reason I bring it up is that what we do is that we have, I created a mechanism where I have a single report. Let's say it's, in fact, I can show it to you real quick. You can run it ad hoc for any, these are the Tuesday reports. So if I'm interested in new profiles, I can say new profiles in Australia, and it will show me over the last few years, new profiles by day in Australia, right? Well, instead of, it's nice to be able to make this report, but we're in 108 countries. So for somebody to run one of these reports for every country, even though it's better than what they used to do, it would still be really tedious and annoying. So what I did was I made a simple data, a table that has the IDs of all the countries. And there's a tool that Pentaho has called the Design Studio, which lets you actually do all kinds of custom, it's run out of Eclipse. And it lets you do all kinds of custom coding. So instead, what my thing does is it says, go to my table, get the list of all the countries that have to be reported on, and now go cycle through those countries one at a time, and run this report and email it. Run the report and email it. And I think within the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna make it so they just go to a network ship instead of being emailed. So that's called the Design Studio. But I'll get to your question in just one second. So the Enterprise Studio is where you set some of that stuff up. So in here, remember I told you that we create database connections. So these are the database connections to my data warehouses that match up what I use in the reports. And they're just really simple. They just use a driver and a connection string. Simple, nothing crazy. The Enterprise Console will monitor the stats. So for some reason, it must be because I'm on the VPN here, but generally that's sent to email test. It just makes sure it can connect to our SMTP server, but it checks all the different applications to make sure that things are available and will alert you if they're not. I have all the different BI components here. I did not plan on showing this to all you guys, so I apologize for sort of poking here, but, the repository, so these tests here can connect to the repository. Do I have all the required tables? Are my database connections good, et cetera? So this Enterprise Console here is really nice because it will alert you if something's down in the server.
I'm not necessarily asking you to demonstrate this, but a moment ago you had that report that you could do for 100 different countries,
Yeah.
kind of in a batch,
Mhm.
batch processing, and then you said it could email off to the right people.
Yeah.
So does Pentaho give you a way to do like, he gets Australia, he gets United States, it's dynamic like that?
Pentaho doesn't, but my table does. So what I have in my table is here's the report ID, here's the name of the report, right? Like paid members and the countries or the city. And in the case of the United States, we report by state groups based on the size. So like Texas, New York, and California get reported together because they're of similar size. And I built it so that I could make the distribution list dynamic. So that the action sequence that I built in Design Studio, not only does it get the report ID, like I'm going to run California, Texas, New York, and I'm going to retrieve the report name, because that actually is what goes on the report itself in the legend. And then there's an email distribution list in there. Now to date, the email distribution list for all of them is identical, but sometimes when there's a change to be made, I just do an update to that table and change the distribution list to be just to me, and then I can test it as many times as I want. But yes, it's not built into Pentaho in that particular way, but if you have a particular report that you only want emailed to these handful of people, then when you schedule it, you can actually schedule that report, through the Pentaho tools to just get emailed to these people on a daily basis. That's pretty easy. It's just if you want to go through an action sequence which loops through and runs the same report with different parameters being passed into it, that gets a little bit, that's more, it's all doable because you're actually writing pseudo code. It's all done through a UI, and what ends up happening is it turns into XML. So in the example, this particular example, I think I can run the remote server. Hold on. I'll show you what the stuff is for you. This one. And I should point out, in the data integration tool, the PDI tool, you can do all kinds of things I didn't show you. You can do JavaScript, so if there's a step that you really none of the little Pentaho graphical icons work for you, because they don't do exactly what you want, you can just send it to a step that does JavaScript. And the JavaScript will just take a parameter in and spit a parameter out. So if you need to format something a certain way, or do some crazy calculation that's not baked in. So Pentaho doesn't limit you to just using the UI tools that are there. If you remember earlier, like in the drop-down list, there was all these different inputs and then calculation steps. You can also do JavaScript and other scripting as well. I know JavaScript is the only one I've had to use before. I think I have this open here still, I hope. I do. I think this is the right one. Yeah. So what I was talking about earlier, the Tuesday reports, these are called report bursts. So in the example of the paid member burst that goes out, I'll just walk you through these steps really quick. You'll see it's printer. And at the end of the day, everything in Pentaho ends up becoming an XML document. And so if this will pop up, and I have two versions of Eclipse on this machine. I think this is the right one. It should pop up. But at the end of the day, everything becomes an XML document. So if you get really good, you don't need to use, if this ever comes up, this tool that's going to have like a UI here. I'll show you. So in this example, and forgive me for not being able to make this bigger. I didn't plan on doing this, but so I have an input is just an integer, a report ID, and then the resource is the actual report itself that I created, right? Just a simple report. Here's where like sort of the magic happens. And let me bring this down, and this over. So what I do is let me see if I can get rid of the Project Explorer and bring this across. Here we go. So the step is a relational query that gets run, which is just a simple query against my table, which is, it gets the report ID, and then in this case, it concatenates the word paid members with the report name and .pdf. That's going to be the file that gets spit out is a .pdf file with that name, and then the report name, that's the report name, and then I concatenate the word paid members with the report name, which is what's going to be the legend in the report, and then the email recipients. And so this just cycles through and finds all that. And then the action loop here is something that just says, go through and by email, send out this report to all of my members. But at the end of the day, what you end up with is just a big XML document that has somewhere in here, it's going to be a SQL query. And don't ask me how it works. I have never once gone in and touched the XML directly because I'm afraid to. But if you're really good at it, you can do the XML. And then the other thing that Pentaho, their secret sauce is called Mondrian. And so Mondrian is their sort of their own language, essentially, that keeps track of all of the tuples and the data warehouse and keeps everything sorted. And they have a Mondrian schema cache. It's all that stuff. And they have their own language. So all of the things that I was showing you that we were doing through the UI earlier, you can also, for instance, if you want to see sales month January versus last January, you can use the UI like I did, or you can go in and type, position -12. It's like a whole language. But I just don't care I don't need to do it at that level. So everything at the end of the day is XML. All right. Well, thank you. If you want to take